There's a reason this story still unsettles people decades later. Gregory Peck wasn't just another Hollywood icon, he was the kind of man the industry produces maybe once in a generation. Calm under pressure, noble in spirit, almost impossible to rattle. He was the steady heartbeat behind some of cinema's greatest roles, a symbol of dignity in a world built on ego and chaos. And yet, buried beneath that composed exterior lies one of the most shocking truths of his career, the one man he could not stand, the rivalry he never forgot, and the private bitterness he carried long after the cameras stopped rolling. What happened between them wasn't just a feud, it was a clash of values, pride, and betrayal so deep that even Hollywood couldn't hide it. And once you hear the real story, you'll understand why Gregory Peck was pushed to his breaking point. People who worked with Gregory Peck often said he carried a quiet dignity, almost sacred calm that softened everyone around him. He was the kind of man who didn't need to raise his voice to command a room. His presence did all the talking. But there was one moment in his long career, one encounter with one man, that pushed Peck past a line he never crossed. Witnesses whispered they had never seen him look so angry, so disappointed, so shaken. Something happened behind those studio doors, something sharp, personal, and unforgettable that forever changed the way Gregory Peck viewed Hollywood, loyalty, and friendship. His story begins far from the glamour of Los Angeles. Born Eldred Gregory Peck on April 5, 1916, in La Jolla, California, to Bernice May Bunny Ayres and Gregory Pearl Peck, he came from humble beginnings. His heritage stretched across England, Ireland, and Scotland, and through his Irish grandmother he was related to Thomas Ashe, the revolutionary who died on hunger strike during the 1916 Easter Rising. Courage, conviction, and quiet rebellion were in his blood from the start. But his childhood was marked by hardship. His parents divorced when he was just 5, and it was his grandmother, his guiding light, who took him to the movies every week and unknowingly planted the seed of destiny. When she died, young Gregory was sent to St. John's Military Academy, where strict discipline shaped him but also hardened him. At 14, he returned to San Diego to live with his father, attending San Diego High School before entering San Diego State Teachers College, where he discovered his talent for theater and public speaking. He dreamed of becoming a doctor and later transferred to UC Berkeley, majoring in English and pre-med, rowing on the crew team, and working in kitchens just to get by. But one public speaking course changed everything. His deep, resonant voice, so unmistakable, so commanding, drew immediate attention, and soon he found himself performing in Berkeley's Little Theater, calling those years 3 of the greatest of my life. Acting awakened something inside him. After graduating, he moved to New York with almost nothing, studying under Sanford Meisner at the neighborhood playhouse, sleeping in parks when money ran out, taking any job he could, World's Fair usher, NBC tour guide, model, stagehand, just to afford another day of chasing his dream. He debuted on stage in 1941 and fought his way through more than 50 plays before Hollywood finally came calling. His film debut in Days of Glory opened the door, but The Keys of the Kingdom earned him instant acclaim and his first Academy Award nomination. From Spellbound to The Yearling to Duel in the Sun, his quiet intensity and noble presence made him one of the most respected actors of his generation. Yet beyond the screen, Peck was far more than a performer. He was a man driven by conviction, unafraid to stand up for what he believed in, a rare Hollywood figure whose moral compass pointed true north. And later in life, those same convictions would collide with a man who violated everything Peck stood for, igniting the one moment that shattered his calm and revealed a side of him the world was never meant to see. In an era when Hollywood lived in fear and silence, Gregory Peck stood like a man carved from stone, unshaken, unafraid, and unwilling to let injustice pass unchallenged. In 1947, as careers were being destroyed by the Red Scare and the House Un-American Activities Committee hunted for communists inside the film industry, Peck did what few had the courage to do. He signed a public letter condemning the witch hunts. He didn't care about the consequences. He cared about what was right. That moment revealed a truth about him that would echo through the rest of his life. Gregory Peck was not just an actor, he was a moral force, a lifelong Democrat. He was even suggested as a potential challenger to Ronald Reagan in the 1970 California governor race, though he rejected the idea with his characteristic humility. Instead, he encouraged his son Kerry to enter politics, a dream Kerry nearly achieved in 2 close congressional races. Peck's influence reached the highest corridors of power. Lyndon B. Johnson once offered him the position of U.S. ambassador to Ireland, an honor Peck seriously considered because of his Irish roots. Though he declined, Johnson later awarded him the Presidential Medal of Freedom, one of the rare moments Peck allowed himself to feel genuinely honored. His outspoken political stance didn't come without enemies. Richard Nixon put him on his infamous enemies list, proof that even presidents felt threatened by his unwavering voice. Peck opposed the Vietnam War but continued to support his Marine officer's son, a reminder that his principles were always balanced with compassion. He produced The Trial of the Catonsville Nine in 1972, challenging the country's moral conscience. In 1987, he used his commanding voice to narrate ads opposing Supreme Court nominee Robert Bork's many believe helped sink the nomination. Throughout the 1970s and 80s, Peck was a relentless advocate for nuclear disarmament and stronger gun control, so influential that the NSA secretly kept a file on him for decades. But behind the public strength lived a man shaped by deep personal joys and devastating heartbreak. He married Greta Kukkonen in 1942, and together they had 3 sons, Jonathan, Stephen, and Carrie. Tragedy struck in 1975 when Jonathan, his eldest, was found dead in what authorities believed to be suicide. Peck later said, "It's the most terrible thing that has happened to me. You never get over a thing like that." It was a wound that stayed with him for life. His one notable affair with the luminous Ingrid Bergman during the filming of Spellbound he described simply and honestly, "All I can say is that I had a real love for her." But fate brought a new chapter when, the day after his divorce in 1955, he married the woman who would remain by his side for the rest of his life, Véronique Besson, a Parisian journalist who had interviewed him years before. He pursued her relentlessly, and once they came together, they were inseparable. Through political storms, artistic triumphs, personal loss, and the relentless pressure of fame, Gregory Peck remained what Hollywood rarely gives us, a man whose dignity was real, whose courage was unwavering, and whose life mattered far beyond the screen. Gregory Peck's second marriage gave him the stability and lifelong companionship his heart had always searched for. With Veronique, he welcomed 2 children, Anthony in 1956 and Cecilia in 1958, and unlike the turbulence of his early years, this union endured until his final breath, a testament to love built on respect, devotion, and an unshakable bond. Anthony would go on to marry supermodel Cheryl Tiegs, while Peck's growing family expanded into new generations, including his grandson Ethan, who stepped into Hollywood to carry the family legacy forward. Beyond the bright lights of fame, Peck lived a richer, quieter life filled with passions few ever knew. He owned champion racehorses Wansai, competed in the 1963 Grand National, and different class took third in 1968. He found peace in gardening, reading, and sinking into music, whether classical, jazz, or opera. His home often filled with warm conversations and the clink of dinnerware as he and Veronique hosted gatherings to support the arts, humanitarian efforts, and social justice causes. And beneath it all ran the steady current of faith. A devout Roman Catholic who once considered becoming a priest, Peck practiced enough, he joked, to keep the franchise, even though he disagreed with the church on issues like abortion, contraception, and women's ordination. Due to church rules, his second marriage was performed by a justice of the peace, yet his commitment to spiritual principles remained unshaken. Alongside his son Stephen, he even co-produced an audio recording of the New Testament, another reminder that he never separated his public voice from his moral one. Through triumphs and unbearable tragedies, Gregory Peck stayed a family man at his core, bound to his children, his beliefs, and the causes that touched his soul, navigating every high and low with the same quiet dignity people admired on screen. Still, for all his brilliance, there were moments when Peck's natural nobility left him miscast. Audiences adored him for strength, integrity, and moral clarity, but roles demanding madness, obsession, or psychological chaos clashed with everything he embodied. The clearest example came in 1956 when he stepped into the tortured mind of Captain Ahab in Moby Dick. Critics felt he never quite captured the feral rage of Melville's doomed sea captain. Encyclopedia Britannica even noted that Peck struggled in scenes requiring emotional extremity, his internal restraint softening a character built on insanity and vengeance. Peck himself later admitted the mismatch with rare honesty, confessing, "I wasn't mad enough, not crazy enough, not obsessive enough for Ahab." And the truth was simple. The calm, dignified moral force who became Atticus Finch could not fully disappear into roles that required unraveling, wildness, or emotional volatility. Critics also noted that romantic vulnerability or flamboyant instability were difficult fits for an actor whose screen presence radiated steadiness, not chaos. While he sometimes broke that mold with surprising success, the reality remained Peck excelled when he played men of principle, courage, and conviction. When asked to slip into madness, ambiguity, or moral decay, the contrast between character and man could be too sharp to overcome. Even so, these limitations only underscored how profoundly he shaped the roles that did align with his soul, and how deeply audiences connected with the quiet heroism he brought to the screen. Gregory Peck's brilliance illuminated Hollywood for decades, but even a giant of his stature faced moments where the material simply couldn't match the man. Some scripts didn't rise to his level, and at times the mismatch was impossible to ignore. One of the clearest examples was the 1951 Western Only the Valiant, a film Peck himself would later call one of the lowest points of his career. Shot on a modest budget, the movie felt unfinished and lifeless. Too many critics routine, uninspired, dripping with artificiality, and stripped of the emotional imagination audiences expected. Peck worked hard, as always, but no performance, no matter how committed, could elevate a story so flat. And then came The Great Sinner in 1949, an ambitious attempt to adapt Dostoevsky that collapsed under the weight of its own seriousness. Despite a powerhouse cast including Peck and Ava Gardner, the project lost money, with reviewers calling it pompous, dull, and drained of the very psychological fire that made Dostoevsky unforgettable. Even the screenwriter admitted that only a few scenes truly captured the depth of the original story. These weren't isolated stumbles either throughout his extraordinary career. Peck weathered troubled productions, misjudged scripts, and films that simply missed the mark. Some disappeared instantly, some limped forward with mixed reviews, and a few never came close to the moral and emotional weight fans associated with his best performances. But these setbacks reveal the truth behind every Hollywood legend. No career is perfect, and even the greatest actors sometimes make the wrong choice, face weak direction, or fall victim to bad timing. What matters is how their best work towers above the failures. And with Peck, the contrast only made his masterpieces shine brighter. When everything aligned, when the writing, direction, and character matched his rare integrity, he didn't just act, he carved the role into cinematic history. His life's final chapter was a quiet one, ending with the same grace that had defined his decades on the screen. Gregory Peck passed away peacefully in his sleep on June 12, 2003, at the age of 87. Battling bronchopneumonia in his Los Angeles home with his beloved wife Veronique at his side. Hollywood mourned not just an actor, but the end of an era man whose moral backbone, both on screen and off, had shaped generations. He was laid to rest in the Cathedral of Our Lady of the Angels Mausoleum, where Brock Peters, who played Tom Robinson in To Kill a Mockingbird, delivered a powerful eulogy, honoring the man who once defended his character with such unforgettable humanity. It was a full-circle moment, fiction and reality merging in a way only Peck's life could allow. His performances had never been mere entertainment. They were reflections of justice, compassion, and courage. In 2008, to preserve that legacy, the Peck family founded the Gregory Peck Award for Cinematic Excellence, first presented at Ireland's Dingle International Film Festival, an acknowledgement of his Irish roots before moving to the San Diego International Film Festival, tying his legacy back to the city where his story began. Though Gregory Peck is gone, the moral gravity of his work, the dignity of his presence, and the unwavering humanity he brought to every to frame ensure that his shadow still stretches across Hollywood and always will. The list of past recipients alone proves just how prestigious. The Gregory Peck Award has become Gabriel Byrne, Laura Dern, Alan Arkin, Annette Bening, Patrick Stewart, Lawrence Fishburne. A lineup so distinguished it mirrors everything Peck himself represented: artistry rooted in integrity, excellence anchored in conscience. This award wasn't created just to honor his memory. It was designed to safeguard his influence, to ensure that the moral courage, discipline, and humanity he brought to Hollywood would continue to breathe through future generations of filmmakers. Even decades after his passing, Gregory Peck remains one of those rare figures whose presence still feels alive, his films echoing justice, compassion, and emotional truth in ways few actors have ever matched. The award carries his name, yes, but more importantly it carries the spirit of a man who proved that talent, integrity, and moral clarity could coexist in an industry often built on ego and illusion. His death was a profound moment of loss, but the imprint he left has only deepened with time. His legacy lives on, not merely through admiration, but through an award that inspires new artists to hold themselves to the same high standards, to treat cinema as something sacred just as he did. Now, let's finally talk about the people who despised Gregory Peck, beginning with none other than Alfred Hitchcock. Gregory Peck was never the kind of actor who showed up, hit his marks, and quietly left set. He dug into his characters, demanded emotional truth, and insisted on understanding the psychological pulse driving every line. That approach clashed instantly with Hitchcock's. When the two first collaborated on Spellbound 1945, their relationship was polite but undeniably cool. Peck later admitted he felt too young, too inexperienced, and deeply unsettled by Hitchcock's near-total disinterest in a character's inner motivations, something Peck considered essential to an authentic performance. Hitchcock, a master of technical precision and atmospheric suspense, often sacrificed psychological nuance for visual storytelling. That difference in philosophy created frictionist when they found themselves tangled with a third powerful figure, producer David O. Selznick. Selznick micromanaged everything on the Paradigm case, rewriting scripts, forcing reshoots, and overriding decisions with aggressive confidence. Hitchcock hated the interference. Peck felt boxed into a role that didn't fit him, and together, they became unwilling participants in a production drowning in creative tension. Reports from the time say Hitchcock didn't think Peck was right for the part, arguing that actors like Laurence Olivier or Ronald Colman, men with more polished theatrical backgrounds, were better suited. Peck felt that criticism deeply. He was an actor obsessed with sincerity, truth, and moral complexity. Now he was trapped in a film where he felt miscast, misunderstood, and creatively isolated. Hitchcock, bored and frustrated, disconnected from the project long before cameras stopped rolling, and the atmosphere on set grew icy, tense, and increasingly strained. Critics noticed the mismatch immediately. Peck's warm sincerity clashed with the cold, rigid environment Hitchcock and Selznick had built. The film felt emotionally hollow, and peculiarly so commanding looked constrained by a vision that wasn't his. Spellbound may have been a success, but beneath its polished surface simmered a quiet artistic war. Their collaboration survived, but just barely. Their approaches, Peck's emotional depth versus Hitchcock's technical sharpness, were simply too far apart. And in the end, Hitchcock never forgot that clash, and neither did Peck. Their second collaboration, The Paradigm Case, exposed far deeper fractures between Peck's devotion to psychological truth, Hitchcock's cold technical precision, and Selznick's suffocating producer-level control. For an actor like Peck, who treated character motivation and moral realism as the backbone of great acting, being trapped in a production where Hitchcock dismissed inner emotional detail and Selznick rewrote scenes on a whim felt creatively stifling, even damaging. That quiet tension between idealistic actors and power-hungry filmmakers became one of those hidden battle lines that shaped the uneasy undercurrent beneath some of Hollywood's most famous productions. Then came Ingrid Bergman. In 1945, when Peck and Bergman filmed Spellbound, something happened behind the scenes that went far beyond professional chemistry. Years later, Peck admitted they had a brief affair, despite both being married. He described it as real love, born from weeks of close, intense work. But in the rigid moral climate of old Hollywood, such an affair was explosive. Scandal could destroy reputations, break studio contracts, ruin careers. Bergman herself would later be condemned by the public for a separate affair, proving just how ruthless the industry could be toward anyone whose private life stepped outside its rules. For Peck, a man known for personal dignity and moral earnestness, the affair created a painful contradiction: loyalty to family on one side, overwhelming emotion on the other. That kind of personal turmoil breeds tension between co-stars, between studios, between friends, and even within the actors themselves. And if anyone in his circle disapproved or silently judged him, resentment could easily take root. The affair may have been brief, but its potential consequences were massive, hidden beneath the polished glamour of the film. But the deepest, most dangerous conflict of Peck's life came from someone far outside Hollywood: Richard Nixon. While most actors stayed silent during the Red Scare, Peck took a public stand against fear-mongering and political intimidation. He openly condemned the House Un-American Activities Committee in 1947 and later became an outspoken critic of the Vietnam War, civil rights abuses, and government overreach. His voice made him a hero to many and a threat to others. Nixon placed him on the infamous presidential enemies list, proof that Peck's activism carried enough weight to rattle the White House. Peck wasn't fighting a co-star or a jealous rival. He was pushing back against a powerful political machine determined to silence dissent. For critics on the far right, he wasn't just an actor, he was an ideological opponent. His unwavering belief in justice, equality, and peace made him a symbol of liberal resistance, and one that certain political figures despised. Gregory Peck's life was not only defined by the greatness of his performances, but by the conflicts he carried with grace. His integrity sometimes clashed with controlling executives. His seriousness could irritate directors who preferred obedience over depth. His moral compass stood in stark contrast to Hollywood's private indulgences, and his bold political voice directly challenged powerful men who would rather he stayed quiet. These weren't petty quarrels, they were battles over principles, identity, loyalty, and truth. The people who opposed him, whether in whispered disapproval or open political hostility, forced Peck to defend the values he held closest to his heart. And through it all he remained the same man, steady, dignified, impossible to bend. His disdain was never rooted in ego or bitterness. It came from something deeper: an unwavering loyalty to truth, dignity, and the belief that a man's character must remain unshaken, no matter the cost. Gregory Peck held himself to a standard that few in Hollywood dared to follow, a standard that demanded honesty over manipulation, loyalty over convenience, and moral courage over silent complicity. He embraced collaboration, valued friendships, and treated everyone with respect. But he drew a hard line at deceit, favoritism, or anyone who betrayed the values he lived by. These tensions, these quiet rifts, reveal the core of who he truly was. Peck was a man who refused to bend his principles for applause or popularity, a man who held his integrity so fiercely that it inevitably exposed the insecurities and weaknesses of those who lacked it. In a world fueled by vanity, politics, and hidden agendas, he walked with a steady calm that challenged the very culture around him. And while that earned him immense admiration, it also created enemies, people unsettled by the fact that he saw through them, people who despised him not because of who he was, but because he reminded them of who they weren't. In the end, Peck's story is not just about fame, talent, or even legacy. It is about character. It is about a man who proved that in an industry obsessed with illusion, the rarest and most powerful force is authenticity. If you enjoyed diving into the conflicts, controversies, and hidden truths behind this Hollywood giant, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe for more riveting deep dives into the stars you thought you knew but didn't. And don't forget to click the bell icon, because the next story will take you even deeper into the rivalries, secrets, and untold drama lurking behind the glittering curtain of show business. Thanks for watching, and remember, in Hollywood, even the brightest legends cast shadows, and the real story is often the one they never meant for us to see.